और अब आज के विषय पर हम लौटेंगे कॉर्पोरेट नज़रिए से किस प्रकार से पॉलिटिकल गवर्नेंस पर चर्चा करेंगे। हमारे साथ यहाँ पर एक पूरा का पूरा पैनल मौजूद है, आइए जिन्हें अभी आप सुनेंगे एक परिचर्चा में, और इस पैनल डिस्कशन का संचालन करेंगे प्रोफेसर गौतम बापट।
Thank you, madam. Today we have a galaxy of experts to have a fantastic panel discussion. Let me begin. I'm going to ask one common question to each one of you. I'm sure they have a cordless mic there. Okay. A common question that needs to be addressed by all of them is, what do they think should be the role of government in the implementation of Make in India and Startup India? This is a very common question referred everywhere, so we would like to have answer from each one of you. What exactly are your views?
Thank you. I mean, if I may suggest, what we'll do is we'll ask each of our panelists to maybe say give us a few thoughts on what they think both about the question you asked, as well as, of course, what is their own view on the role of, learnings from corporate for politics, for governance, and of course the role of youth. So maybe we can just start with you, Vinita.
Good afternoon, everyone. The corporate sector in India has come of age and is very much looking forward to playing a big constructive role in nation building. We have today GDP growth rates which are among the highest in the world, but we should not get complacent seeing the tremendous manpower availability, technological capability, and overall potential. We in corporate India believe that a double-digit growth rate could easily be achieved. Now, why is the corporate sector not doing it? We need an enabling environment which can only happen when the government and the politicians analyze their respective roles and concentrate their governance on core sectors and move out of the non-core sectors. What are the core sectors? By core sectors, we have the judicial system. India has one of the best judiciaries in the world, but their benefits are at best eclipsed by the outdated procedures which lead to cases dragging on for decades. The government should adopt best practices in judicial system like other successful countries. Defense. We have one of the best armies in the world, but depend on overseas armament suppliers to buy our defense armaments. We had a policy whereby the Indian private sector could not participate in defense production, but now, thankfully, the government has opened up defense production to Indian private sector, allowing it not only to become self-sufficient, but exporters in due course. Education and skill development. A lot of focus is needed in this sector, considering that the Indian education system is completely out of sync with the current requirements, causing poor employability. Skill development is vigorously being talked about, but very little is being done in this sector. There are very successful models of skill development for the government to study and emulate, like the German, Swiss, Japanese, and the South Korean models. Agriculture. Almost 60 to 70% of our population depend on agriculture. And its improvement can bring about prosperity to this sector, resulting in accelerated economic growth. Transportation and communication. We are glad that the government has realized the importance of these two sectors and has taken up its development. More needs to be done on the four means of transport, which is road, rail, air, and inland waterways, railways. Now, why do we need a separate railway ministry? India is perhaps one of the only 3 countries in the world which has a separate railway ministry, the other 2 being Pakistan and North Korea. Even countries like the communist Russia and China have done away with railway ministries. Indian Airlines. Why should Indian Airlines not be privatized? Inland water transportation. India has a coastline of 7,000 kilometers and a multitude of rivers. But almost nothing is being done to develop the infrastructure. Roads. Highway construction needs to be taken up vigorously. Apart from these, there are other sectors like international law and order, internal law and order and public health, which fall in the core sector. Now, these are the areas of the core sector where we need the politicians to frame the general macro policy and involve the corporate sector for faster growth. Having talked about what the government should do in the core sector, we must also see what the government must do in the non-core sector. One of the major impediments in corporates taking up ambitious industrial and infrastructural projects is the high interest rates caused by the high fiscal deficit. This fiscal deficit is caused by the huge involvement and expenditure of the government in non-core sector. If we look at the Government of India budget estimates, we see that the fiscal deficit is caused by the huge debt service obligation. Studies have been carried out recently that places the market valuation of the non-core sector of Government of India that can be corporatized and brought outside the government sector at over rupees 1 lakh crore, whereas the total debt of the Government of India stands at 60 lakh crores. If the government thinks big, there is a possibility to eliminate the entire fiscal deficit, thereby starting a virtuous cycle of corporates, both Indian and foreign, taking up big infrastructural and industrial projects. In conclusion, the Indian corporate sector is very enthused and proactive in bringing about prosperity to the Indian economy and its masses. We would encourage a very healthy debate between the government and the corporate sector to delineate areas where they can play their respective roles towards the common objective, which is national good and vikas. As Chanakya had said, Arthasya Mula Rajyam, which means that in order to govern the state well and to keep its people happy and content, wealth of the state is essential. Welfare of the state is not possible without money. Prosperity or wealth depends on good governance of the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Delighted and honored to be here. Again, as we look ahead and we look at the world, India is now on the center stage. India is considered the bright spot in the world. Everyone in the World Economic Forum is talking about the GDP of India and what the potential is for growth. I think a little bit of what Vanita said, none of it will be possible without cooperation. Between cooperation of the government as well as the corporation. And let me just outline a few areas where I think the corporation is going to be especially essential. First, if we talk about labor participation, in particular for women. If I look at India, India's women are amongst the most educated in Asia. Yet, when you look at labor participation, it actually has the lowest labor participation across all of the Asian countries. This has to be looked at both through cooperation of what corporates can do, but also what the government can do to further encourage women to stay in the economy. Many different economists have looked at what the GDP improvement can be if women just stay in the economy. We have a fantastic base of talented women who are not sufficiently in the economy. So that is one area where there could certainly be a cooperation. The second is around technology investment. And just let me lay out three areas. The first is on healthcare. If you look at India today, the number of beds required relative to the need is far lacking. And the outcomes are not what we would want them to be. So again, where can industry and the government come together to make sure the citizens have a sufficient healthcare? The second is around urbanization. We all know that over the next 10 years, India is going to become more urban and there will be many more cities. And so investment in technology around smart cities will be essential to make sure we have productive cities that allows for good quality of living. This will include investments in transportation like metros, in roads, in the right way of looking at urban planning. But collaborating on urban planning, again, will be one critical area. The third is around skills development. Again, the future of India depends on having an educated and having a high base of skills. Technology will enable us to educate many more people. But again, this will require cooperation between the government as well as industry. The third area is around water, a very fundamental need. But again, many reports suggest that the water supply will be behind what India needs. This is partly due to storage, partly due to investments in water technology. But this is an area, again, where there must be collaboration. And the last is around energy. Over the next 10 to 20 years, India will have to shift from a coal-based energy mix to a mix of other cleaner technologies. And these are all areas which can substantially improve the GDP, but will not happen without both the investment of corporates, but also the collaboration of government policies to make it so. Thank you. Very honored to be here.
Thank you very much. Yes, please. No, the mic will come to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Or to the few people that I can see sleeping, good morning. Can I get a good afternoon back? Wonderful. I'm very impressed with this organization, and for two reasons. One is typically when you invite guests, you will typically have the guest speak first and then the student. But MIT has chosen to have the student speak first and then the guests. And that's very symbolic of why I think we all are here, to support you in you achieving your potential. The second reason I'm impressed is I could never sit for so many hours like each of you in those chairs quietly. And that's why I asked you to say good afternoon. I'm going to start with a very simple question, which I think is often ignored or avoided in education, which is, why are we here? Why are each of you sitting for so long in those chairs? Why are we here from different parts of India? We're here because we have a common goal. Whether we're here as students, whether we're here as corporates, whether we're here as government, we are here to help see the great potential we see in each of ourselves, in our companies, and in our country. And as Sahana said, the world's eyes are on us. You may know of the World Economic Forum, which Sahana spoke about. But India is really looked to today as a lighthouse of opportunity. And why? Because we have so many of you. What I mean by you is the youth. The eyes of the world are on India because we have 500 million young people under the age of 25. Now, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? As the question for us today, will India reach its potential? Well, India will reach its potential if each of these individuals reach their potential. And in order to do that, the heart and soul of achieving that, to me, and why I do what I do in education, is education. So what is the state of education today, given that it's such a critical pillar for us to achieve our potential? And what role does government play to support that? If you look over the last 15, 20 years, India has made great progress in education. If you look at enrollment rates in school, we have some of the highest enrollment rates in school. However, if you look at quality, we have some of the poorest levels of quality and quality outcomes across a wide variety of surveys in education. So there's a great need to push quality in every area of education: early education, primary, secondary, vocational, and higher education. The question is, what is good quality? If you imagine when you go out to the working world and when you're in the prime of your careers 10 years from now, Or for people who are starting in preschool 20 or 30 years from now, what will the world look like? In the last 10 years alone, we've seen more than 200 million Indian people join the knowledge economy and join being part of the internet world. Knowledge is everywhere. What we as the youth, as students, as corporates need to know how to work with that knowledge. How do we think critically? How do we collaborate effectively? How do we communicate effectively? And how do we think creatively to create solutions for problems that we don't even know that exist today? So, going back to our question, the Prime Minister in Startup India recently said, what he sees as the role of government, he said, we've been trying all kinds of laws for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and see where it's got us. What he sees as the next 10 years is for government to step out where it's not necessary so that young people like you can really reach your potential without being blockaded in different ways. That is not to say there's not a role for government. Private sector will naturally address certain issues, whether that's in education or otherwise. And there's a real need for government to step in and address areas that may not be as well addressed, or work in public-private partnership in areas like Sahana talked about, water or technology or health or education. So with that, I wish each of you will really work to develop not just skills in memorization, but to really think critically, collaborate effectively, communicate together, and be creative citizens that help us reach the great potential we have as a country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Hello, what's up? See, I'm the least experienced and least educated among all these guys who are sitting on the dais. But one thing which I should say, that whatever I'm going to speak would be on your behalf. So I'm not going to speak on the topic which they have given me. Instead, I will speak what, from your point of view. So tell me one thing. Why do anyone tell us that these X, Y, Z should be the rules or regulations or should be the part of our politics system? Why do you think anyone else should tell us? Just to give you a perspective, we have about 3,300 colleges where every year tens and thousands of students pass out. And just imagine, why can't in all those tens and thousands of students, why can one person say that these are some issues that we need to take it up? And the government should look into these aspects. Don't you think it's a fair game? If we don't know where we are going, then any road will take us. So आज मैं जो भी बोलूँगी, मैं आपके तरफ viewpoint से बोलूँगी, ना कि what they are telling us. So I feel politics is very, very important, and I'm so glad that at this point of time, we have a stage or we have a place where all these things are being discussed. There are colleges who are teaching us what politics is, क्या अच्छा है, क्या बुरा है. And in all this, the technology is making a huge impact. Any decision which the government is taking, whether good, right, controversial, it's been discussed among us through Twitter, through social media, and it's all been done by youth, by people like you and me. We look into Facebook, we look into Twitter, what's happening, and who has done what, who has said what. Why do you think it is gaining so much of popularity among all of us? Because somewhere we want to change the system. And why do we have to look at somebody else? Why can't we be the change agent? So, with one line I would like to conclude. Definitely politics make a lot of difference in our government system, and it's we who have to change the entire system. And we have to stand up and say that, hey, come on, these are the 5 things which can be done better. For example, any traffic rules in Pune or anywhere else. Can't we come up with some solution as a student committee and project it to our government? Hey, these are the best things which are being followed by X, Y, Z countries. Why can't we do it? And why do we have to take help of the government services? We are, strong enough to make that change. And I'm sure next year when you do this program, we'll all be part of that change. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.